Well, hello. Welcome to the 24th day of December, 2021. This is the Good Life Meditation, my daily remembrance of yesterday, my plan for my life, and that sounds heavy, and forecast of the day ahead. Let's start. So, yesterday was an interesting day. You know, these end of the year days at work sometimes are slower than others because a lot of people are out and there's just kind of a more of a holiday atmosphere. So it was a struggle for me to maintain productivity. There's something about the churn of activities, of emails coming in and Teams messages and the knowledge of goals that it keeps me going through the workday. Usually I have a little pad of paper next to my computer there, right next to the right of the mouse, and I'll lay out the day's objectives and try to knock those out. It went a little slowly in the AM, but I made up for it in the PM. I had a very good and productive afternoon, so I'm very pleased with that. Next week will be more of the same, another full week of the week after Christmas and heading into New Year's. Again, a kind of a quiet week, but the good thing is, well, there's a lot of good things. Things are going well at work. And another good thing is that yesterday was 3 weeks in at the new job, and I think that the effort to assess, plan, and proceed is working out. I got the teams by midweek last week. I had within the first week I had a new direction in mind. By midweek this week I had that documented, and the team by the earliest part of the week I had it documented. By Wednesday I had the team in agreement, and yesterday at the end of the day the executive sponsor agreed as well. So we have our plan, and it is signed. Next week I will we have our decision about the way we're going to go. Next week will be all about laying out the actual details of the plan, which I've already done. It's just I had extracted those from the document because I didn't want to confuse things. Now I'll reinsert them in, and then use the new tool to find a way to illustrate it. The old tool that I used, I had a particular way of doing it. I'm using a new tool that I'm not familiar with, so there'll be work in that. The goal is that when we return in on New Year's on January 3rd, I will have a direction agreed to by the sponsor, a plan in place, the deliverables laid out, ownership of those deliverables. That's another thing I will try to get next Wednesday. And I've already got it, except for one item, which is okay because the one item I want anyway. I'll take it. It's a team of 6, so I'm soliciting names to work on the various deliverables, and I've already got that. I've got volunteers for all of that, and including myself, I've signed myself up for some of these, and then when we return in January, we just go, we execute, and I know we can do this because I've done the exact same thing before. What works in this case is having a product that works, and a process and a tool, having a good offering, and then marketing that good offering. You know, your confidence can increase when you have something that you know works, and I do know it works because I've been using it for 7 years now, successfully. It's the new tool that's the new piece, but it's better than what I was using before. I just have to learn it. Anyway, so that was good. So yesterday was a work day. It was a good work day. Again, as usual, I was just wiped out by the end of the day. I was ready for bed by 8 p.m., in bed by 9 p.m., out like a light. I slept really good. I need to check my sleep number because I've got one of those sleep number beds, because that really is a good gauge and barometer on my health. I find that if I'm sleeping, my averaging, up in the 70s or the 80s, then I'm in good shape. If this isn't my sleep number. This is the report that the bed gives me. I know it's confusing because it sounds like the number, but my sleep number is I think it's like around 50. Yeah. When my report number is averaging 70 to 80, I think the best I've averaged is 84. I'm living well. My life is going better. When I was in Ventura, I was down in the 40s, but that wasn't in Ventura's fault. That was largely the fault of the pandemic and the way that I was living and working for a while there, the long commute, sleeping in Airbnbs. Man, I should write more about that, record what that was like. I could even write a short story about that. That would be interesting. Hear the rain upstairs. Upstairs, it's the roof. I like that. It's been raining hard since yesterday afternoon. Yesterday morning, actually. So yesterday was a good day. Last night was good. I slept really well. I felt a little melancholy in the morning yesterday because I knew that I was going to be facing a day of limited productivity, and that always has me uneasy. Today is the first of 3 days for this long weekend, heading into Christmas. I'm planning to spend much of that day sitting in this chair, which my wife got me. She was the one that set this all up for me. I mean, well, I set that up, that stuff, but she's the one that got me the nice chair and suggested I take this room. She even set up for me right out around the corner here a coffee station, and she even bought me a refrigerator to put cold drinks in, and waters and tea. I love it. I can really have real like, lattes on demand right over around the corner there. It's really nice. So I want to read, I've got it over there. My friend Juan recommended it to me, Necromancer. It's a science fiction novel. I usually don't read fiction, but I'm gonna do it. I'm looking forward to it. I like science fiction. And what I really like is I like Juan. I think Juan's an amazing guy. If it's something that Juan finds interesting, then it's got to be good. Okay, let's do The Good Life. Oh, and I have the book adjusted. The Good Life is laid out in one of the chapters of my book, Going Alone. And it consists of 7 objectives and 30 life principles. It's in chapter 9, in fact. Right there. And I've built these since about 2018 was when I started, so full 3 years. Well, it's got to be sooner than that because I released this book in December 2018, 19, 20, 20. So it's been 3 years. I released this book 3 years ago, and at that time, The Good Life was in the book, so it's got to be earlier than that. So I've been working on this for quite a while. And you see how it kind of works? You kind of it lays out the principles and the objectives one by one with a short description. And I think of these out loud in the morning, and I do this to, 1, remember them, and 2, to work on them. And I have a rote way that I can do it. I can just kind of spill it out. Like I could do the whole dang thing in 4 minutes if I wanted to. But I prefer to do it slowly and deliberately, trying to change up the words, adjusting the meaning, etc. Not the meaning, adjusting the way the meaning comes out so that it's not rote, so that it's deliberate. Anyway, this book is available on Amazon. You can also get it if you go to my website, goingalone.org, and you can order the book right there. And if you get it that way, if you order it that way, you'll get a signed copy. I've got a little shipping station right over here with all the stuff out there. If an order comes in, I can ship it all out, assign it, and mail it out to you. And you get some goodies like stickers and stuff like that. Here we go. Good Life Meditation for the 24th day of December. Christmas Eve, no less. 7 objectives. The first of these is to be always ready to die. To have my life in a state where things are relatively settled, should I no longer live. Mainly so that my wife and daughter can carry on without too much difficulty. And so that whatever I wanted to say in the world has been said. I picture that as a little shelf, no more than a shelf worth of stuff. In fact, I should probably move that right here, right there, because I have a little shelf of stuff. So that it's not too inconvenient. I don't want to leave Emily with boxes and boxes of me. Just a little shelf full. Maybe just one book. That would be sufficient. And to have all my relationships in a settled state. All my I love you said sincerely. And to have resolved issues with as many as I possibly can. Boy, I wish I could. I think I'm in good shape with that. I could have better relationships with some of my friends. I'm not a good friend. I'm a distant friend. But that's my nature. I can't really adjust that too much and be sincere. But my relationship with my mom, I really do wish that was better. Just don't know why she just doesn't really want to have a relationship with me. Or maybe that's just what I tell myself. I don't think I'm incorrect in observing that I'm pushed away. The curious thing is I'm pushed away for reasons of her own invention that aren't true, or if they are true, they're based on small little nuggets of truth that are inconsequential, but mostly simply not true. Not much I can do about that. Oh well. That's another principle, is to accept true limits, and two principles actually. Accepting limits and opportunity. There's a limit that I can't get inside my mom's mind and change her opinion of me. And then the other principle is the principle of nature, recognizing and accepting that this seems to be her nature, to view the world through a curious lens of her own creation, where everything is seemingly distorted, dare I say, for the purpose of distraction. Yet another principle. Okay, the second objective is to make good use of time and to make effective use of time, so that my activities are in pursuit of virtue and that they are actually achieving that. Where virtue is defined as the objective improvement of well-being, of the well-being of thinking creatures. The next objective is the development and maintenance of good and sound life principles. That's these 7 objectives and 30 principles. And I work on this. I worked hard on it this week. I worked in my free time to really get the recent changes into place. The next objective is the performance of good actions, just to do objectively good things throughout the day. Seems strange to say the word objectively there, but I think that's an accurate thing. To do things that, if measured, would be shown to be helpful. Am I excluding myself from other things, from some forms of good? I don't think so. Subjective good seems like a shortcut to allow us to indulge in our natures, which may not always be good. I'm off in the weeds. Next is the recognition of true limits and true opportunity, seeing what is within my control and what is not. And then last, the just doing one thing at a time and doing that one thing slowly. Suddenly I'm tired. Let's kind of move around a little bit. Okay, let's do the principles. There are 30. The first is the principle of war, to always be fighting against everything that I think is true, and everything that you think is true too, or that you propose is true. 2, reason, and the sub-principles of honesty, objectivity, and doubt. Reason is the tool that I use to pursue that truth, execute that war. 3, the homunculus, the little mortal who lives inside my head. It's basically my consciousness that will wink away when I die, and there will be no afterlife for me to enjoy, or you, or anybody. 4, the Anchorhold, the place where the homunculus suffers and dies. Little rock sticking out of the sea. Next is the home of good and evil, the little catalog of right and wrong that resides above the head of the homunculus, written in chalk, subject to the wind blowing it away and able to be squished away with your fist, and to rewrite it when you make a mistake. It's important that you can update it and change it. No. Next is, after the home of good and evil, is the principle of purpose. Everything has a particular purpose. What? Everything has a particular purpose. I'm mixing things up. The principle of purpose is my stated purpose, and there are three of them. One is to be a good husband and father. 2 is to live a virtuous life. And 3 is to execute some mission. My mission now is to share the good life. First to live the good life, and then to share it. Which I'm doing right now. Next is the atomic principle. Everything is made of bits and pieces, flowing and changing and forever transforming. Next is the principle of nature. Everything has a particular nature. It's good to recognize what that is. I talked a little bit earlier about the nature of my mom that I do recognize and attempt to live with. Next is the pirate ride, the hypothesis of no free will. I can't know for sure that we don't have free will, but I suspect that's true. If you press me, I'll yield, but it's what I suspect. That came out good. I like that. I like the way I'm taking that neutral. It was the way my friend Trevor suggested, taking the neutral, the middle ground, right? Which isn't asserting it's true or saying it's not, but not being sure. There we go, and it came out well. Next is maturity, and the sub-principles of wisdom and fortitude, which are what we gain over life and make us more clever and informed. And if we're strong, we can avoid repeating our mistakes. Next is the principle of the social principle. We are social animals. We need each other. I almost went the other way. I think that would have been a mistake. I almost went the very solitary life. I don't think I could have recovered from that. Next is the principle of public speaking. To use few words, carefully chosen words, and very deliberate words, and to not gossip. From there we come to temperance, and the idea of holding things in, doing things less, consuming less, working less, playing less, everything less, in very reasonable amounts. The sub-principles there are suffering, because we suffer when we deny ourselves what we want. Learning to deal with that suffering. Simplicity, because denying ourselves what we want leads to a simple life. Simple life of denial. We don't have to deny everything, just not to excess. And then apathy. Accepting what we can't control, accepting what we deny ourselves, accepting that we have denied what we deny ourselves, and accepting what is outside of our control. Like it's outside of my control to really how my mom perceives me. I have to be apathetic to that, while at the same time striving to maintain the connection. It's a tricky balancing act. The next principle is the horrifying principle called the horror show, which is nothing more than a recognition that the world and life is chock full of genuine horror. Maybe not to each of us each day, but it's happening around us. Not just to human beings, but to others, to other creatures as well. And I don't dwell too long on this one because it's not something that I'm trying to focus on. I'm simply trying to identify that as part of the nature of life, of the world. No, life is the right term because a rock can't experience horror. Still not sure exactly what to do with that one other than simply point it out. It's like a signpost. The horror show. A little sign. Horror. That's all this principle is right now. A little sign in the landscape. Horror. Wish it wasn't there. The next principle is called the principle of that which must be borne, carried. And then sadly, what so often has to be carried is the fact and consequence of horror. Or accident, which sometimes is just another species of horror. We have to bear these things. And below that principle is the sub-principle of the hand on the tiller. Keeping the hand on the wheel, maybe lashing our hand to the tiller. The wind is blowing and just try to keep the boat sailing straight in the direction of the objective direction of virtue. The next principle is the Feast of Offal, which is what happens when we really let loose into the world. Spread our upset to everybody. I had a guy yesterday. I went to the pet store to get some dog food after work. I don't get out much, living in this beautiful home now, working from home and stocking up. We have a big pantry, so we stock up with stuff. We don't need to go out. I can go a week or weeks without leaving the place. But I left yesterday and I was in line to get into the mall, and there was a guy in a truck behind me, honking his horn, flashing his lights, I don't think he was doing it directly at me. I think he was doing it at the world, because this place takes a long time to take a left turn. He was so frustrated. And eventually he just roared around me and off, blaring his horn as he raced past, because we were in the left, 2 lanes in the left turn lane. He was in the go straight lane, just blaring his horn, honking at everybody as he went by, just letting everybody know. I don't know what he was going to do, if he was going to get up to the front and just cut in front, or maybe go past and turn around and come back. I don't know. That's the Feast of Offal, when you've just had enough and you're just blaring the horn and flashing the lights and screw you and get out of my way, I'm late, or whatever it is, And he literally upset everybody. I saw it. I like to say I saw it coming. I recognized it for what it was. As soon as he started, I had the music on a little bit, and I was like, is he honking his horn? I turned the music off. He is, and we're dead stopped, right? Just nobody moving. And we're all in the lane. And then the lights started flashing, and I thought to myself, oh, he's sharing the feast. See, that's where doing this every day really helps out, because it primes my mind. I'm like, oh, geez, a little Feast of Offal going on back there. He's throwing it all around. He's throwing it at me even, splatting it on the car. And it did upset my equanimity. I love that big word, my balance. I was enjoying uh, the Alan Parsons project, The Fall of the House of Usher, a very good piece of music in the rain, listening to the rain in it, no less. And I had he upset all that. So he definitely upset my balance. But since I had a way to respond, I did so. I tempered my upset. I assessed the situation, make sure I wasn't doing anything that was violating rules or propriety that was causing him upset. I couldn't tell anything other than the fact that I was driving a Prius, which some people don't like. And off we went. That's the Feast of Offal. Is when you do that and you share it with the world and make everybody else upset. And I'm sure everybody down that line went into the shopping mall with their blood pressure slightly more elevated than it would have been had that guy not had that tantrum. That's the feast. And then they carry that into the next stage with all their interactions, and they pass it along, right? So I try not to engage in that. The next principle is distraction. We spend our lives distracting ourselves with all kinds of stuff. Work and play and sports and TV, whatever the case may be, reading, whatever it is, making videos, so that we don't have to face the emptiness of the universe. At least that's what I think. And that's this next principle, which is the emptiness of the universe is the great indifference. The centerpiece of my book. The next principle after that is the risk of avoiding risk. The fact of the deep level risk of becoming the man or woman that we want to be, and the surface level risk of all the accoutrements of life. It's hard to get both. Next is sin and damnation. There are 7 sins in my worldview. Credulity, hope, faith, superstition, dogma, authority, and gossip. The first 6 are sins by way of our willingness to either believe, mostly to believe things that get us to a place that we want to be in terms of our settled mind, or, in the case of hope, just clutching at pearls and desiring some other circumstance without actually doing anything about it. Hope is all right when it's coupled with some sort of action, but hope alone is a sin. If indulge in excess, if that's where we settle on, is on hope alone. And then there's gossip. Boy, that one, reminding myself of gossip every day, really comes in handy. It's really rare. There was one instance last week where I gossiped a little bit, or maybe that was 2 weeks ago. But I mean, it's like brief moments of gossip, and these are weeks or a month or more apart. It'd be really interesting to throw myself into a real social situation, like a Christmas party, and see if I can avoid gossip now. I think I can. I think I just about got gossip tamed. That's no small thing. Next is complete oblivion. And the complete oblivion suggests that after death there will be no reunion with those that left before us or who will die after us. We'll never see them again because we're utterly and absolutely gone, and we have no soul, and there is no afterlife. I think we can state that. The null hypothesis is that those things do not exist, simply by the utter absence of any good evidence to the contrary. So we won't see anybody. We're not going to see grandma again. We're not going to see our mom and dad or our kids. That means that there'll be no final reconciliation either. We won't have a chance to make up for any harsh words or disagreements that either they or us left life unsettled over. And there won't be any final justice. Any crimes or offenses committed during life will remain. If they're not settled during life, they will be forever off the books. So the reason I say these things isn't to make myself depressed, but it's to remind myself that I'd better reconcile now while I have a chance. I better meet up with the people, see them before I'm gone, and they're gone, or they're gone, or both of us, and then also try to seek after any justice that I can while the chance is there. No final reunion, no final reconciliation, and no final justice. That's the principle of complete oblivion. The next principle is the great life adventure, which is a very important episode of life where we kind of formulate our identity, or we do something that draws out character or forms character and gives us a story, something to settle our life upon. Like, for example, when I'm at my computer, I've carefully arranged it so that the camera is behind me, all this stuff. And I was in a meeting, was that on Wednesday, and someone asked me, it was just he and I in the meeting for a second, he said, all that stuff behind you, is there significance to that? And that was a great question, because yes, everything in the background has significance. That's because the way I live my life, I don't keep stuff unless it's got some, not just a memory, but usually a deep and heavy memory attached to it. And I can point out any of these things. That is the Great Life Adventure. These are keystones. It's not the right word, is it? These are touchstones of many great life adventures. And now I have those stories, and I have that character, and you do too, for whatever life you've so far lived. But the thing is, it gets harder to do as we get older. The time if you really want to have a standout great life adventure or a series of them, is to do it during the decade of the 20s. Go get that education, but once you're during the education, and once you're done, go out and adventure in the world, and don't come back until you're 30 with a suitcase full of memories and a tattoo or two that from exotic locales, and maybe some healing ointment from some infection you picked up somewhere. That's gross. but you get the idea, right? And spend your life. I knew this woman some time back in the Santa Barbara days. I can almost remember her name. I worked with her. She had the most beautiful, thick black hair, and she would comb it all the time at work. And she was a very beautiful woman. And just, I remember her hair. And her parents had a house up on the hill in Carpinteria. Beautiful place. And when she was a little girl, her mom and dad sold their place, something similar to what my parents did, and they moved to the South Seas, I think it was Rarotonga, in fact. They moved to a small island in Rarotonga, and they had this stunning great life adventure. They had 2 daughters, young girls, but old enough to remember everything. And they lived this life on the South Seas Islands. Now, I wish I could remember more. I wish I'd asked her more questions. That experience became the family's great life adventure. It became the centerpiece of their family life together, because they came back to America, came back, and there's more evidence that you can come home. Somehow got settled, got a house in Carpinteria, which is a beautiful place by the sea in Santa Barbara. The daughters went back to school in America. It sounds very similar to what my wife and I did, bringing Emily back from Japan. And gosh, what was her name? She talked about that, where she would be combing her beautiful hair. And she would tell, because it was a type of job where we had lots of free time on our hands. And there was always we always worked in pairs. And so she and I would sit together and talk. And nothing fun, no funny business, just, friends. And she would tell me these stories. But the thing was, her life always kind of revolved back to that. I mean, she was in her late 20s, early 30s, I think, at the time, as was I. And her life would kind of, it was like a great gravity well that her life revolved around. And she would tell stories about that, or she would say something about it, or talk about her parents and you just got this, I never met her parents, but you just got this impression that her parents were these people whose lives had this deep undercurrent of the experience and the courage that they had taken to upend life and to go to bring their kids to Rarotonga in the middle of the South Pacific and forge some identity in life for a few years. That's what I mean by a great life adventure. It's a really tough one to pull that off, right, as a family. I know, I've done it. And the other way to do it is as an individual. Some people aren't driven to that. I have no interest in it, and that's fine. But if you feel you are, especially if you're young, if you're in your early 20s, or even your teens, your mid to late teens, and you're feeling that, and I recommend you do something about it. Those feelings typically don't go away, and life will be very quick to saddle you with the accoutrements of responsibility from an early age, especially if your family encourages you in that direction. Go to school, get a job, find a spouse, buy a house, save for retirement, raise those kids. Before you know it, you're 62 years old. It's time to retire, and you're too old, weak, scared, and timid to do much of anything other than go golfing. I'm painting in broad strokes here, but I think you get the impression, right? Versus if you just say, hey, I'm age 20 to 30. These are mine. I'm not getting anybody pregnant. The world is mine. If you're so inclined, then go do it. I think, and if you survive it, I think you'll appreciate the life. And if you don't survive it, then what a life. Okay, so that's a great life adventure. The next principle is the season of philosophy, a time to record what we've learned through our life and our great life adventures. As I've done with my book, Going Alone. This was my season of philosophy. to leave something behind, some memory, a mark of what I experienced, thought, and how I lived as a result of that. But do it while you, when the muse speaks to you, because the muse tends to go away. And when she comes back, she's somebody else. Almost near the end. The bullseye aim suggests that so often in life we strive for the mark and we're usually a little off. I use this one all the time at work. I mean, all the time. Everything I do is the bullseye aim. It's so rare that I hit the mark, and I just move on. I just say, well, there you go. I tried, I threw the axe, and it's like two marks off. That was my best shot. I'll try better next time. Then next is the uphill climb. This trudging uphill until we either fall off the cliff or stop climbing. Next is the arena and utility. Life is an arena for the development, instantiation, and execution of good and sound principles in the direction of objectives that are worthwhile. 2 more. Nothing is enough. Getting by with less. So that what we wind up with at the end is a shelf with a few memories on it that are substantial in their own right, that tell stories, but very little clutter. And the last principle is the principle of fun. A reminder to enjoy life. It's not all this serious stuff. It's good to have fun. I'm a little late in the game for figuring this one out and actually doing it, but I'm working on it. All right, that was my good life meditation. Very long today. Wow. Let's forecast the day. It's going to be a rainy day. It's Christmas Eve. Presents are bought. House is warm, well stocked with food. Dogs are warm and rested. I need to take them out for a walk now. They won't be happy in the rain, so I'll probably carry them to the end of the block and then put them down and walk back. And when I get back, it probably won't be another 2 hours till Emily and Yumiko get up. So I'll come back here to this chair and begin Necromancer recommended by my friend Juan. And then I'll let the day unfold. I'm not going to plan to do any house cleaning today. I'm just going to let the day unfold. And with that, I'll sign off. Thank you for joining me for my Good Life meditation for Christmas Eve 2021. I wish you all the best. Be safe, but not too safe.